Welcome to another episode of Bitcoin Magazine Live. I am your host, Q, coming to you yet again from my mother's basement. It is Tuesday, September 20th, and we still have no idea where P is. But we do have a jam-packed episode for you all. In just a moment, we'll kick things off with news and notes, and we have an interview today with Julian Liniger over at who's the founder of Relai, the Relai app. Excited to jump into things with him, but let's dive right into it, everyone. First things first, it looks like CBDCs are going to be coming from Amazon and will be delivered in 2 days or less by Prime shipping. Friday evening, the European Central Bank selected Amazon to develop its digital euro e-payment system. While this is not exciting in any way, shape, or form, it is very important to note that Amazon is slowly finding itself overly involved in the broader crypto ecosystem. Off the heels of this news, there were some fun little tweets going around over the weekend that pointed out that 69% nice, of hosted nodes on the Ethereum mainnet, of which 50% of them run on top of AWS. Now, Wiz pointed out that Bitcoin is not abstained from this problem, with just under 25% of ClearNet capacity hosted by AWS and an additional 25% of ClearNet capacity hosted by Google. Chris, this can't be a good thing that we've given Amazon and Jeff Bezos this much power, can it?
Yeah, so I guess I want to caveat it. So with the nodes, so right now you were saying 69% is hosted on the Ethereum mainnet. So that means that those are the actual nodes or validators, as they're called over in that ecosystem. The difference between Google and Amazon, they have a lot of capacity. So meaning they both have about 1,500 Bitcoin each. There's about 4,800 Bitcoin locked up into Lightning channels. So while they have about 50% of the capacity or thereabout, close to that amount, they don't have the number of nodes. So I think Amazon, when we were looking at it, has 551 of the nodes. And then Google was only like 77 nodes. When the public Lightning capacity of nodes that actually run are about 15,000 nodes. And those are the public nodes that people know about. There's about 17,000 that people can reach and see. And then there's estimates of, and it's much harder to do when you're running a node over Tor and you're using it privately without opening channels publicly. A lot of estimates are upwards of 100,000 nodes globally. So, I mean, like I run a node and I don't have it publicly displayed out there. Obviously, if I were to do a transaction with someone or open up a channel and it doxes my node to them, they can account for those nodes. But yeah, as of right now, they have a lot of capacity of the Lightning Network, but they don't necessarily have a lot of the decentralization aspects of it, which is a good thing. If Amazon and Google were to shut down and you can't use our nodes anymore, that would be a bad thing. I mean, it would be bad in the sense that fees would go up using Lightning and payments might bounce or might get caught in transit. And it would cause people to, like I said, the fees would go up and it would be slower to transact. It would still be pretty quick relative, but it'd be faster than 10 minutes, but it may take 30 seconds to a minute to 2 minutes for a transaction to get through. So that is kind of the nuance. But then someone brought up a great point. One of the guys over at Voltage says that you open up a market for it. Let's just say you and I have cold storage Bitcoin. And now there's a market for opening up channels directly. Like, I have my Bitcoin right now, but if this payment provider needs liquidity in, let's just say they need $50 of liquidity, if I were to open up a Lightning channel with them and they were to pay me to route Bitcoin through there, it basically incentivizes people that have Bitcoin that's either in cold storage or in a hot wallet to open up a Lightning channel to allow liquidity to go through at cheaper rates. And you're collecting the fees almost like a toll to allow this Lightning capacity to have. You don't lose any Bitcoin, you're paid, but it routes over to the other side and you're basically given fragments of the Bitcoin or sats as a fee to promote helping move this Bitcoin around. So I think it would be a very big test case. I do think in the long term, the governments will clamp down on Amazon, Google, Azure, by Microsoft for these companies to stop routing payments. It looks like it's in the pipeline with what we saw with regulations coming out of the federal government. I hope that was a good, description of it all, Q. And do you have any questions about it?
Seeing as I've heard this description now 3 times, I think I finally have gotten the hang of it. But if you've got any questions, throw them in the chat. Chris is our resident technical expert for today because, as you can tell, P is still in hiding and refuses to show up for work. It's now turned into a point where there's a level of concern and at the same time also all right, guy, It's time to own on your bet. Hammersaw, that was like 15 years ago, bro. Hammersaw's comment on the chat, but there's no way you got a Mexican pizza with Pete Cook in it. I do want to just highlight and point out, like, we're not trying to be doom and gloomy. We're just simply trying to not be hypocritical. We're pointing out different points of failure is a little bit extreme, but I think points of uncomfort, discomfort, points of, I think, difficulty are worth recognizing so that we can do better to further expand Bitcoin's network out of the reaches of big tech. Because, and honestly, this is a great opportunity for me to have this rant that I went on this morning in our morning staff meeting. We're going to talk in a little bit about MicroStrategy, but I don't know why the hell any Bitcoiner is actually celebrating when a major corporation that has billions of dollars has now, quote unquote, adopted Bitcoin and is storing their wealth, their cash reserves, or whatever in Bitcoin, because that makes it that much harder for the lowly plebs like you and I to continue to stack and build our own stack. But on top of that, it makes it that much more difficult for the non-coiners who will eventually be onboarded onto Bitcoin, be able to access enough Bitcoin to live a comfortable life, to have enough to really prosper in this new world that we talk about. I don't know. That's my mini rant on that. We can keep going down this rabbit hole throughout the day, honestly, because
we'll touch on MicroStrategy later, so we'll save it for then, Q. But I like where your head's at.
Let's chase some good news. Chris, give us some good news.
Well, so we're talking about the resiliency of the Lightning Network, but we weren't talking about how cool the Lightning Network is. So I've got a short 2-minute video clip here that I love to show, and then we'll talk about it afterwards. So let me pull it up real quick, and we'll discuss it.
So I'm in Satoshi's place in Bury, and I'm at the bar. I've got a Negroni Nakamoto here, but I'm going to ask my friend to pay for it for me. So I'm calling Matteo now. Screen record as well. Hey Matteo, what's up? I'll spin you around. Where are you right now? Amazing. I'm in Manchester. I'm in a bar that accepts Bitcoin. I'm just wondering, would you be able to buy my cocktail? Yeah? I'm gonna spin the camera around. You see that on my screen there? That's the cocktail. Okay, so there's your invoice just there.
Let's do it.
Is it reading?
Yeah.
Nice. It's done. Oh my days, that actually worked. Holy shit, it actually worked. Basically, let's just get this straight. You are 8,000 kilometers away from me right now, no? That was mad. I can't believe that. I have this voice. Hey, I'm buzzing. That's so good. Thank you so much. Cheers. What time is it in California? Yeah, okay, yeah, maybe a bit early to start drinking. Yeah. Thanks, mate. I'll hang out now, but cheers, mate. And wait, how do you say cheers in Italian? Salute. Will do. Salute. Ciao.
Yeah, so that was Joe Hall. He's a reporter for Cointelegraph. And that was just a cool video of him being in Bury, England, or in the greater Manchester area. It's about almost 5,000 miles away from California, where his buddy Matteo was. And Matteo paid with Bitcoin over the Lightning Network for his drink. And let's just talk about the logistics of this. Like, how cool is it that they did that over a phone call, paid for it instantaneously with no problem? Imagine trying to do that with a credit card. Yeah, I bet you could give your credit card number to the the cashier. But the issue is the credit card company would probably be like, oh, we know that you're in California right now. It would probably flag it for fraud, and it would like lock up your account for a few weeks. So I just thought it was like a really cool example of paying for Bitcoin over Lightning. I know there's been many videos in the past of this. It was just like a cool reminder of, while people are saying the centralization of Lightning, which, has its risks for sure, but, Lightning still works, and it was just a very cool video to watch. And like how quickly that was. He called him on FaceTime. I mean, the video itself is 2 minutes long. He's on the phone with him for all of 45 seconds, and he pays it in about 15. Just very, very cool. And I thought it was just, a cool demonstration of how the Lightning Network works. Q, what are your thoughts there?
It's awesome to see, like, in real time, the questions you sometimes get from normies of, well, like, what can I use Bitcoin for? Well, guess what? You could buy your friend in England beer now. In actuality, though, like, this also, I think, is a really important, there's a larger thing that's, I think, for me, very interesting, because there is a degree of this where it's kind of, it's an easier version of calling your friend and being like, yo, my credit card just got declined. Can you just like give them your number and like, I'll Venmo you back, kind of like there's a degree of this where it's a much easier version of that, but it is that. But I think the cross-border payment is where it becomes interesting. Like, depending on your credit card or however you sort of transact in the fiat world, you may need to get approval to spend money in a different jurisdiction. You may need to give them a heads up. Oh, I'm traveling here. You don't have to do that with this in theory. Like, he's sitting at home in California down the street from me and just bought someone a beer in Manchester, and no one's going to say anything. No one's going to stop him. And that's the important part. It's not so much that he's doing it, because there are 100 different ways to do this. There really are. But it's the fact that because the network is not controlled by anyone else, because Vitalik can't get his hands on it, because AWS isn't going to stop this transaction, because Papa Powell can't print more Bitcoin to make your Bitcoin worth less, because Joe Biden can't wake up cranky tomorrow and say, fuck Bitcoin, or Elizabeth Warren can't say you're boiling the oceans. None of that stuff matters. No one can stop a transaction from happening in Bitcoin, whether you want to buy a beer, whether you want to buy a car, a house, or whatever it is. No one can stop a transaction on Bitcoin. And this, I think, is a really awesome validator of that statement.
Yeah, I just want to caveat one more thing and highlight what you said. Like, let's be honest. Like, if you're trying to do that in the legacy system, on the cheap end, it probably costs 6 to 7% of the transaction to do that, because there's a 3% probably banking fee going from California, wiring US dollars over to Europe. And then there's a $3 fee converting it back in exchange rate, or a 3% fee converting back to the exchange rate. And that's excluding even the credit card fee that they take in the middle. That's either 1 to 3%. So like, really, we're looking at like 7 to 9% for that whole transaction to happen in the legacy banking system. And there has to be liquidity on one side. I mean, on Lightning, I didn't get to see what the fee rate was, but he paid fractions of a penny in order for that transaction to go through, and it happened across the world, which is like really mind blowing when you think about it. Like, not only is it a net savings to the consumer when they're paying for these things, it's just a better experience overall. And I thought that was very, very cool. You're muted still. Yep.
Someone's got to take P's role while he's out. That's an excellent point. And like, we continue to see use cases for Bitcoin continue to slowly but surely expand. Given the market environment, given the global environment, this is a very bullish step for the broader Bitcoin ecosystem. Okay, we're going to go back to bad news now, and I'm talking about the thing that I'm going to talk about. Starting today, 12 old white men, and I think maybe 1 or 2 women, are all going to lock themselves in a room, maniacally laugh, and decide how they want to ruin the rest of our lives. 2 women. Thank you, Chris. So 10 men, 2 women, and Papa Powell. They're going to just sit there and decide how they want to fuck up our lives for the intermediate future, we'll say. I don't think that they get a say in my long-term future, nor do I frankly think anyone does anymore. But the FOMC meetings have started. Tomorrow we will get the announcement. It will happen live while we're on this show. We will break it to you live on this show what the rate hikes will be. Anticipation for a 75 basis point rate hike sounds almost all but locked in. We're seeing some potential for 100 or even 125 basis point rate hike. I do my betting on Sundays for football. I don't really bet on the FOMC rate hikes. So I will just sort of stand by. I do want to, however, point out, Chris and I, we had this conversation yesterday. The 2-year yields, however, have started to spike higher. And mind you, they were doing a very strong job of sort of holding a high of that 3.5% area. And now we're looking at a 3.96% yield on the 2-year treasury, which would imply that the market sees the Fed's fund rate going even higher than the 3.5% sort of cap off that earlier this year it had expected. I rarely say this. I'm a big believer that the market is smarter than all of us, in the same vein of, the house always wins, the market always wins. I'm a big believer in sort of that mentality. But I think the market's wrong. Famous last words. I don't see a reason why the Fed fund rate should go that high. It can, because the Fed fund rate is arbitrarily made, again, by 10 men, 2 women, and Jerome Powell, who sit in a room and sit there and decide how they want to fuck us this time around. I think if you have not been really paying attention to this tidbit from myself or anyone in this space, we're all quoting Stanley Druckenmiller when we say this, but there is a strong belief that above 3.5%, the U.S. will have to default on all the interest payments it will be paying off at that point. James Lavish a couple of weeks ago in his newsletter was highlighting exactly what does that mean? How much can we afford in interest payments, and what happens if we go from 3% to 4% to 8%? Spoiler alert, we go bankrupt. This is nerve-wracking, as those of us who are paying attention, and many of us in this space for multiple years now have been calling and saying, you can't just print nonstop. You can't just do these things and not expect there to be an effect on price and just the broader ecosystem in the next year or two. Ultimately, what we're about to see is a bunch of people who don't know what the fuck they're doing continue to make more decisions that they don't know what they're doing. And then as a result, we are going to be the ones left dealing with the situation that they've created. This can be something slow and steady. This will ultimately, I think, be the kiss of death should they cross above 3.5. But Chris, I've been rambling for a minute.
I had to pull a pee as well, But no, so over in the UK, they are calling Sam Bankman-Fried a scammer. What does that mean? The UK regulators issue warning on crypto's FTX to customer. So the Financial Conduct Authority, or the FCA, says FTX may be offering products without authorization. We believe a scammer is impersonating FTX. So at first I was very confused. It's like, what, they're calling Sam Bankman-Fried a scammer, or it was, they're calling the FTX exchange a scammer. The UK's Financial Conduct Authority published a warning to consumers about Sam Bankman-Fried's crypto exchange, FTX, saying it isn't authorized by the regulator to offer financial services or products in the country. Obviously, FTX responded saying we're well aware of the regulations and we're doing nothing of the sorts. On Friday, they said now going back to FCA, is saying it's targeting people in the UK, adding that investors are unlikely to get your money back if things go wrong, since it won't be protected by the country's Ombudsman Service and Compensation Scheme. I guess that's kind of like their equivalent in the UK of FDIC insurance. A spokesperson with FTX said the firm is well aware of the notice, but it added that the FCA had listed an incorrect phone number for the exchange. So just giving you guys a heads up, don't trust, verify. This seems like a normal case of basically a scammer is trying to impersonate the FTX exchange. Obviously we've been advocating on the show to buy Bitcoin non-KYC free or peer-to-peer, whether on BISC, on RoboSats, buying from a Bitcoin miner that But just giving you a heads up that if you do decide to use a KYC exchange, be well aware of those risks and make sure that you are logging on to the correct website, whether it's Strike, Swan, FTX. You can list the gambit of these exchanges. Just be well aware of not only the KYC risks, but also the risks that there are people trying to scam people out of their money and saying, hey, this is a legit exchange, but really it's linked to a fraudulent website. And by the time you send them money, the money's gone, and you probably wouldn't have any protections. You'd probably be at a loss of your money because, as we've said in the past, a lot of these exchanges aren't FDIC insured. Or if they say they are FDIC insured, like with Celsius, Voyager, even BlockFi, like you're just kind of an uninsured creditor. And in the event that the bank goes bankrupt, they would cover the assets of all of these firms, but they don't cover your assets because the banking relationship is between the company and the bank, not you and one of these platforms. So I just hope that's clear. Q, anything else you want to add there?
I think we're going to see a lot of the crypto heroes either cave and become state agents or disappear. That's my take on this.
What do you want to expand on disappear?
I mean, like it could be a variety of things, man. It could be like
they suddenly fell ill.
It could be like he killed himself. Or it could be like he like did something illegal, so we need to arrest him. Or just like, I don't know, gift him an island so he just shuts up. Like that's what I think happened to Tom from MySpace. Is like someone just gave him an island.
He's on Twitter, which is funny. A guy that created another.
He won't respond to my DM, so therefore he's not alive until he responds. Like that's how the world works. We're not in a recession until I am unemployed, and Tom is not alive unless he's responding to my DMs.
All right,
Tom, if you're listening to this, please respond to the Bitcoin Magazine DMs.
All right,
but no, I think in all seriousness, I think it is interesting to see lawmakers continue to, I think, go after crypto as a whole. What that means for Bitcoin, it'll be interesting because I think, unfortunately, in the eyes of these lawmakers that are going after Sam Bankman-Fried, I don't really think they understand or acknowledge the difference between crypto and Bitcoin. And unfortunately, I think if there was a Bitcoin only app that had similar issues as what you've described, FTX sort of is finding themselves, or the UK regulators have found within FTX, I should say, I don't think the Bitcoin exchange would be left alone because, it's Bitcoin, it's fine. I think it would be almost treated in a similar vein. So that's my way of saying, if you're a Bitcoin creator, founder, or startup, there's no reason, I think, to put a target on your back when there are bigger targets out there. So like, let Sam Bankman-Fried and DoKwon and Mashinsky, let them get the flack and build the right things. I don't know. I realize what I'm sounding like is like Bitcoiners are creating apps like that, and I'm not. So I'm going to stop talking because I'm just rambling. Cut my mic, Chris.
Well, I think you got the next story, but I think you did a good job summing it all up. So,
it looks like Chinese Communist Australia is going to join forces with China. Australian senator proposes a crypto bill targeting China's digital yuan. The proposal lays out disclosure requirements for banks that can make China's central bank digital currency available for use in Australia and seeks to set up licensing and frameworks for stablecoin issuers. Private bills are not common to get through Parliament, but Senator Andrew Bragg hopes this opens up conversations with his colleagues about crypto. All right, Andrew Bragg, how much is Sam Bankman-Fried paying you, first off? Secondly, when did Australia become like a Chinese state all of a sudden?
I'd say 2020, maybe.
I guess. Look, we're going to have I think next week or the week after, it's next week. We're going to have a deep conversation on just CBDCs and why they are the perfect tool for the Chinese surveillance Communist Party, but why Western democracies sort of aligning themselves with CBDCs or adopting them is such a scary development that we don't, I think, sometimes acknowledge just how much of our freedoms will be taken away with the adoption of a CBDC. I do think, and I mean this in all seriousness, I saw a report coming out of Australia. So the Queen is on all Australian and British colonies fiat paper money. Like I have an Australian $20 bill somewhere in my room that has the Queen of England on it. And well, she's dead. The King, Charles, that's how much I really care, is now going to be the face of all fiat currencies for British colonies and so on and so forth. I don't even know if, I guess technically Australia is not a colony, but honestly, if you're about to partner with China, you deserve to go back to being a British colony. Sorry, I said it. There's like some uproar about having Prince Charles or King Charles on the faces of the dollar bills in Australia. And so if their options are, hey, we don't want Prince Charles, so we're going to give the Chinese CBDC a chance in our country. Oh my fucking God, we've lost the plot, people. It's like, really? Like Western democracies think a central bank digital currency, it makes sense? It's almost as if there's never been a Western democracy and they've all just sort of been surveillance states in different pedigrees.
Yeah, show me incentives and show me the outcome. You mean, like, I assume the Chinese government just went to Andrew Bragg and said, we'll give you a fuck ton of money, just push this through. Like,
Dude, he already has some digital yuan. Like he is
yeah, exactly. Like there's, yeah, exactly.
But you or I could never confirm that. The only people who could are the Chinese government, who could literally wake up tomorrow. Like, how nuts is this? Like, think about this for a second, guys. Today, you have $1 million worth of US CBDC in your bank account, but you posted something hurtful, not even aggressive, just hurtful. Well, guess what? Your post got reported, and that report went into some database, and that database triggered oh, hey, you can't be a millionaire if you're mean like this. And then all of a sudden you woke up after yesterday, you posted something mean that got reported. Now your bank account, instead of saying you have $1 million, says you got 600,000, says you got 60,000, says you got $5. Well, guess what? With a CBDC, they can fucking do that.
Yeah, and I think it's even more malicious because, you know, when you look at a bank account, it shows like incoming and outgoing. Like, imagine it just updates and there's no way for you to prove that you had that amount of money. Like, that starts where it gets like real deep state stuff. It's like, no, I had $1 million in here. It's like, sir, no, it says 600,000. You're like, no, I know. Like, they're like, sir, like, I'm sorry, that's what the account balance says. So like, the governments can really co-opt it in the sense that like, it's not like it deducts $400,000 and it's like, oh, like it shows that it's going to the government for punishment. Like, they could just change it on a whim. So yeah, I mean, things get very, very scary in that regard. You want to keep going on this, or should we go to the next story?
Tell us about the running child.
DoKwon, not on the run, but he is also not found. So South Korean authorities have confirmed that DoKwon is no longer in their country while he maintains that he's not on the run. Singapore has also complied with the request and said that he was no longer in the city-state and was believed to be earlier. So South Korean authorities have issued an Interpol issues a red notice request. A red notice request is when basically a fugitive or a terrorist or something like this is put on this list. 197 countries agreed that they will arrest you and detain you on site if found. So it is not something to be taken lightly. This is not something they do for just an ordinary, like, you know, you robbed your local 7-Eleven. Like, this is, you're an international criminal and they're looking for you. So normally what they do is if you're found in what X, Y, and Z country, they detain you and then they work with the embassy of the government that issued the red notice request to extradite them to that country in order for them to go on trial. Normally when these people get caught, or if and when they do get caught and sent back to their country, they're obviously on heavy surveillance, basically house arrest. So this is something very, very serious and not something to be taken lightly. Singapore prosecutors issued a warrant for DoKwon's arrest on September 14th and then moved to invalidate his passport a few days later. They obviously officially issued their red notice request yesterday. DoKwon tweeted that he is not on the run, as in full cooperation with the authorities, and has nothing to hide. He also said, though, he's like, unless we are friends, have plans to meet, or involved in a GPS-based Web3 game, you have no business knowing where my GPS coordinates are. So, very, very interesting. Like I said, we were saying last week that he resides in Singapore, but now Singapore obviously probably did a wellness check, or they checked his place of residence, and he was not there. So it remains to be seen where he is, or, now that his passport's invalidated, I'm assuming he's either out of the country, or, it remains to be seen where he is. Like I said, the red notice, I mean, how many countries are there? Like 209 countries, something like that, 260 countries. I don't know the whereabouts, but like when 195 of them are looking for you, that is not a good thing. I said 197, but 195 are basically have red notice requests for you. That is not a good sign. Q, any thoughts there?
I just think it's so funny that DoKwon continues to come out and behave as though he's done nothing wrong. That, what? Dude's going to jail for a really long time, like a long time. And the truth of the matter is, he will never go into jail because he's just going to be in hiding forever. Ultimately, this is so much more serious, I think, than many people who don't have any sort of legal, especially international law understanding or experience. And this is way more serious than DoKwon is ever going to lead anyone publicly to believe. But I think the fact that he is not in custody says everything you need to know. If he was actually working with law enforcement, like, he would have turned himself in. He would have answered their questions. He wouldn't be living on some remote island somewhere that no one knows. But I don't know. I am making some stuff up because I don't know actually where DoKwon is, nor do I know his thought process or rationale. I can only speculate and say, dude, if you got nothing to hide, then don't hide nothing. But you're hiding yourself, so clearly you did something wrong. I don't know. Can we go to the next story, Chris, or is there anything else you wanted to touch on here with DoKwon?
No, I think that's it's a good wrap. You go ahead and hit on the next story.
New record. Over 900,000 addresses now hold over one Bitcoin. Congratulations to the newest class of whole coiners, and to those who are working their way to get to one whole coin. I applaud you and best of luck.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And, as Bitcoin's UTXO model shows, just because there's one or more Bitcoin in that address, obviously you're assuming a single entity owns that, but multiple entities can own, of that 900,000, MicroStrategy has, like, let's just assume 20 of those addresses. So it gets very, very interesting. And then you could still be a whole coiner without even owning one whole address that has a Bitcoin in it, but you have 10.1 Bitcoin addresses. So it's very, very cool into deep rabbit hole of who owns them, where are they? I know Bitcoin is pseudo-anonymous, but very, very cool. Kind of moving over to the next story. So while the one Bitcoin addresses have hit over 900,000 addresses, the Bitcoin Lightning Network continues to grow as well. The Bitcoin Lightning Network capacity has surpassed 4,800 Bitcoin, or about $92 million in US dollar denominated value. It's very, very cool. I know we were talking about earlier the issues with the capacity of Amazon and Google own about 3,000 of those 4,800 Bitcoins themselves, or at least don't own them. They route through their nodes, and God forbid a government crackdown occurs, that could slow down the routes, or it can lock up the Bitcoin with issues. But still, nonetheless, very, very cool. The 0.1 addresses are growing. The 1 Bitcoin addresses are growing. The 0.001 addresses are the number of them is growing. The Lightning Network capacity is growing. This is for building in the bear market. So very, very cool stuff. Who else is buying in the bear market, Q?
Well, it looks like Microstrategy once again bought the dip. Microstrategy acquired approximately 301 Bitcoin for $6 million in cash. It looks like Saylor bought Bitcoin, Tina's Bitcoin. Man, I wish I had read that second line before I said it. Look, we talked about this at the very beginning, and this is what I do want to spend some time talking about. Look, these are really cool things that corporations see what we see the utility of Bitcoin, the future potential of its value as far as the global financial system is concerned. But it is concerning when we talk about this technology that is meant to be a freedom technology for people who have been left out of this fiat monopoly and been used and abused by the powers that be. This is the safety raft. This is the exit ramp. And yet we sit here and we applaud when multi-billion-dollar companies and billionaires jump into Bitcoin to buy more of it and then make it that much harder for, if we can be quite frankly, just blunt, take it away from the people who need it. Now, mind you, there's an argument to be made that, well, if these people don't want it, what are we to do? Teach them, help them see, and make it more about them than for us. I think I'm going to quite possibly every single time we're told that MicroStrategy bought more Bitcoin or the next company adopts Bitcoin, I'll clap, but like more like a golf clap, very lightly. And my concern is more with, the statistic I just brought up, the fact that there are 900,000 whole coiners out there in the world now. That's incredible. I think it's a bit of a leap, and I'm sure that some of these people hold multiple addresses. Besides the point, though, we need to celebrate, I think, the individuals, the everyday citizens who are adopting Bitcoin, who are making their first Bitcoin purchase, who are spending their Bitcoin for the first time. And we need to spend more time, I think, focusing on those stories than we do about MicroStrategy buying more Bitcoin, because here's the God's honest truth, guys. The only reason you celebrate that is because you think this is going to be the thing that pumps your bag up higher. Last I checked, Michael Saylor levered up a buy at 54K Bitcoin per dollar. And here we are now at under 20. I think at one point this morning, we were under 19K a Bitcoin. So whatever your belief is, however you feel about businesses adopting Bitcoin, I think we've somewhere along the way, we lost the plot. And the point of Bitcoin was not to help enrich the already enriched, but it was to help those who have been left out, those who have not had the opportunity to prosper. I don't know. Maybe I'm being preachy. Like, if I'm being preachy and you want me to shut up, like, say so. I don't care. This is just my perspective on it.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, we saw Saylor at Bitcoin 2022. Q actually had the pleasure of sharing the analyst test with him. I'm sure he's an awesome dude. But to Q's point, like, Bitcoin's for everyone, so we can't prevent him from buying it. But at the same time, Michael Saylor is already a billionaire. Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, they can hate on Bitcoin, but they're already billionaires. Like, they don't need it to work. They don't need it to succeed. But I do look out for the families that are in El Salvador or the poorer countries that need Bitcoin to help their family thrive in the future. I know it's very, very difficult when you're not making enough money to barely cover your expenses, that, sometimes buying Bitcoin is not the best option. And, that's okay too. The thing about it, though, is it is for everyone, and it is I'll pull up AS's thing. Onboarding is all about finding out what's important to them and how Bitcoin can help solve their concerns. I think that's absolutely true. But yeah, if you're only barely making ends meet, like, getting Bitcoin and then being forced to sell it at a lower price doesn't help you. So that then it's more about, like, increasing your cash flow or your sats flow, however you want to call it. I know there's something very, very interesting. If you were to divide up the about 19.2, 19.1 Bitcoin that are in circulation right now, I know there's 21 million total, but like right now, present day, if you were to divide up all the Bitcoin that are around evenly, including lost coins, it comes out to about 250,000 sats per person on the planet globally. And when you think about it, that cost of 250,000 sats at this current moment is $47, or like 47.16. I just looked it up. But that doesn't, like, that's the average. Like, assume you do it equally. That's the average. I'm assuming Q and myself and maybe a lot of other people that are watching this have much more than $47 worth of Bitcoin. So that puts you in a much, much wealthier position in the future if Bitcoin does hyper Bitcoinize. I know CK is always talking about, like, it's either going to infinity or it's going to zero. Like, there's kind of it like sort of worked, but not really. So if you have more than $47 of Bitcoin or 250,000 K of Sats, you should consider yourself very grateful and blessed, because that will be worth a lot of money on a long enough time horizon. I mean, CK always talks about 37 Sats is the block reward in like 100 years from now. And that'll be like generational wealth. So it's just kind of counting your blessings. And he talks about trying to get your Bitcoin from now to when you need it in the future, whether that's 2 years from now, 10 years from now, 40 years from now. Like, it's all about keeping your Bitcoin and the difficulty of that task and just getting it to your final destination. And hopefully you can get it and you can gift it to your heirs or to your family. Or I know there's some altruistic Bitcoiners that don't want to give it to anyone. They want to pass away with their keys, and basically it's their way of donating back to the network that they don't pass on their Bitcoin. That's not something that I probably plan on doing. Who knows? Maybe I'll change my mind, but I hope to give it on to my family and hope to build a legacy and, have a long family and a way for them to be wealthy. So Q, any thoughts there?
I love that. I want to even expand, because say we take the full 21 million and divide it by the world population. Chris, the number you threw out was 250K for the 19.1, right?
250K for 19.1. I think it's like
it's 264.
Yeah.
It's not that many more sats if we divide the whole network. So the point we're trying to make is, the world we live in has long established things will not be evenly distributed. We know that. We know where the average should be. Where the median will lie will probably end up being much lower than that, in my opinion. And so as a result, it's on a lot of us. And this was a very interesting conversation I had with Shinobi, kind of going off of what AS said. I talk a lot about that 80-20 principle, about how, 20% of users understand what they're using, and then most of them kind of just don't. Light bulb, car, Bitcoin. Right now, we are building our 20% base. If you are in the Bitcoin space now, you are an early adopter. Even if you just got in this year, even if you have been forged in this bear market, as I was forged in the bear market of 2019, we are early. And we are the ones who are learning and interacting with this technology more than the next classes ever will. And as a result, we will make up that 20% who know and understand this product better than most. And it is on us to, I think, help that 80% use and interact with Bitcoin in a way that is so seamless that they don't need to understand it in the depths that we do. And I know that's a scary proposition. I know that is almost antithetical to what many Bitcoiners believe. But I think for global mass adoption to happen, we need to understand that the masses just sort of do what is easiest. The path of least resistance is what they follow. And right now, whether we like it or not, the path of least resistance is just continuing on the fiat nightmare. I worry that if too many businesses hold too much Bitcoin, that is a whole new FUD that gets introduced. Michael Saylor has 10% of all the Bitcoin ever. We can't use Bitcoin because Michael Saylor becomes too powerful if that happens. We don't need more FUD, guys. We don't. It's already obnoxious enough trying to combat the climate change narrative. It is already such a pain a thorn in the side of Bitcoiners who passionately believe that Bitcoin is the solution, not the problem, to climate change. And it'll happen. There will be more businesses that adopt Bitcoin. There will be more high net worth individuals that continue to adopt Bitcoin. But my ask is, rather than we celebrate these things, we continue to onboard our friends and families and even strangers so that they're not left even further behind in the next iteration of the global financial system. Chris, unless we have anything more you want to touch on here, I'm going to go down to the final story for today.
Yep, keep rolling. Sounds good.
So I talk a lot about Iran on this show. You will hear me talk a lot about Iran in the future of this show, so deal with it. For many people who are not aware, there was an incident that happened in Iran, and I want to lay a little bit of background. In almost all Islamic Muslim countries, there is a legal requirement for women to cover themselves up in different degrees. Everyone is aware of, in Saudi Arabia, the women have all the scarves that all you can see is their eyes. In Iran, it's not dissimilar. Women must wear clothes that cover all the way to their wrists, their ankles, and then they have to wear a headscarf to cover their hair. Over the last 10 to 12 years, however, the necessity of the hijab has been less and less enforced. Women are becoming more westernized. They're showing more of their hair. The enforcement of the rule, however, depended on where you were. Unfortunately, a few days ago, a 22-year-old woman named Mahsa Amini was killed because of the way she was wearing her hijab, not covering her hair enough, and she was killed by police. Since then, there have been protests all over the country of Iran, as well as the rest of the world right now, standing up for what is truly an injustice of a woman being killed for walking down the street. And mind you, I know not everyone is going to agree with my perspective or my passions for my people and my country, but I urge you to not think of this as a black and white issue of, well, see, this is why these people are under sanctions. I live in America. I've lived in America my whole life. I've been pulled over by police officers and been spoken to in ways where my white friends are like, I've never dealt with a cop like that. And I just looked at them and was like, that's just being brown in America. I've seen the way some of my black friends are treated too. And we have seen these videos transpire all across this country. In America, this happens to a class of citizens here. And it is happening to a class of citizens in another country. We saw and reported on the story north of the border where Canadian truckers were at their freedoms taken away because of a decision that they made. Whether or not you agree with this class of citizens, whether or not you believe what they believe, for any human being to lose their rights, to have their lives taken away, no less, is just wrong. And I urge you to learn and understand what's happening and not buy into the mainstream hype. This is not a reflection on the Iranian people. And I think the response of the Iranian people speaks volumes to who Iranians are and what our values are, a lot more than the decisions by a very dwindling minority. I wanted to just share that, and I appreciate all of you listening to my mini rant on that. We will go ahead and go back. We will come back shortly after this commercial break, and we will be joined by Julian Liniger. Julian, I'm so sorry. I hope I pronounced your last name correctly, man. We will be joined by Julian Liniger, the creator of the app Relai. We will be back after these commercial breaks. Thank you all. Through those commercial breaks, and I'm excited to introduce our guest today. He's the founder of the app Relai, Julian. Julian, how do I pronounce your last name?
No worries, man. Thanks, Q, for having me. My last name is Liniger.
Liniger. Okay, I knew there was an extra I. I apologize for skipping it the first two times, man. Welcome to Bitcoin Magazine Live. Thank you so much for joining us. for our audience who maybe isn't familiar with the app or who you are, do you mind giving a little bit of background?
Of course, yeah. Thanks for having me. I really love your content, and I read the Bitcoin magazine for the last at least 5 to 6 years. So you guys are doing amazing work, and thanks for featuring us already a couple of times in your different channels. So my name is Julian Liniger. I'm a young 29-year-old Swiss entrepreneur in the Bitcoin space. I found out about Bitcoin in my studies, or while I was studying in 2015. Didn't really take it seriously enough until 2017, when I drilled down and learned as much as I could about it. And then 2018-19 transitions to make this my not only my hobby but my full-time profession. And so since around 2.5-3 years now, I'm working on Bitcoin 100% as an entrepreneur. I have founded Relai, Europe's easiest Bitcoin app made in Switzerland. So we really are on a mission to bring some Bitcoin into everyone's pocket and trying to make it as easy as possible for people that are maybe not like tech or finance geeks to get their hands around a couple of sats. We make this with a mobile app that you can download, and within 1 minute, with your bank account or whatever payment methods you want to use, can buy your first Bitcoin within 1 minute and from $10 already, directly into your non-custodial wallet, because Relay is also a mobile non-custodial wallet. So we're basically making it as easy as possible to get your first Bitcoin. And we're also very renowned in especially in Europe, by the Bitcoiners to have their savings plans, like automatic recurring savings plans. You can set it up and forget it, and you basically stack sats or DCA every week or every month. And also Bitcoiners really like us because we are Bitcoin only, and because we are basically the best tool to recommend to friends and family who are not into Bitcoin yet. So we're also kind of an orange pilling application.
I love that. And I want to talk about the orange pilling, but first, let's go back in time, because I love that you talk about how I learned about Bitcoin in 2015, but I didn't get it. And it wasn't until 2017 when I really took the time. I'd love if you could just share sort of what was your mentality? What were the things that when you first heard about Bitcoin in 2015, you were like, no, go away. No, no. And then what was the thing that convinced you in 2017?
Yeah, good point. So I need to really go back in time mentally a little bit for this one, because it was like 20, what was I, 24, probably then, 5 years, no, wait, 5 years ago, 23. So I was young. I was still, early in my studies, and I didn't really know lots about the world. I was studying actually psychology, and my minor was business administration. So I didn't really know a lot about technology or about finances yet, or like how the world works. I was just a stupid student. So I just got introduced by it by a friend of mine who was a techie. I'm like not a techie at all. I cannot read one line of code of my own app. Unfortunately, that's the part of my co-founder and CTO, Adam Bilichan. He did all the technical magic. I really don't understand this, so I didn't really understand the revolution of it, of the technology and of the digital asset, because I just didn't have enough experience, I guess, in that. And so I just saw it as a game, as like something that looks cool on a screen. And this guy told me like, oh yeah, this is something digital that you can trade. It has a price. The price goes up and down like heavily, sometimes 10-20% per day. And we just looked at it as a digital trading tool where you don't need banks or a portfolio to trade it, but you can trade it 24/7, 365 days a year, and it just goes up and down and blinks. And then he also obviously showed me all these other cryptocurrencies that already back then there was not many, but already then there was a handful or maybe even dozens of different assets. So you could trade them 24/7, and you look at all these graphs and blinky visuals and stuff like that on these different platforms that were available back then. And this was kind of what drew me in. It was more like a game, to put a little bit of money just to work and gamble, basically. And so this was what caught the interest. And only after investing a little bit and trading a little bit and winning and losing a little bit of money for like 2 years with a very low amount of money, I then took the time to really get deep on like the fundamentals from a technical point of view, from an economical point of view, from a societal point of view. Like, how can the future of our financial system look like? Whereas actually and this was after I studied and understood a bit more of our financial system or economy. What could this mean? Like a new financial system that is actually decentralized and detached, like open to everyone and neutral, detached from politics, detached from financial institutions, detached from governments, no central banks that can just print money and inflate the wealth of people away. An asset that you can trade 24/7 and transfer 24/7 globally around the world without any constraints. All these things then became really apparent to me that this is actually a huge innovation and not just the game.
So well said and so well put. I want to talk now, present day and onboarding new Bitcoin users, orange pilling people. I feel like the conversations that we have today with people who are interested in Bitcoin are vastly different than conversations we were having 2 or 5, and obviously 10 years ago. I'm curious if you feel like, some of the new users of Relai or the people that you orange pill more recently, if their mentality or their reasons for adopting Bitcoin are different than the reasons which you shared, why you looked at Bitcoin and why you wanted to go down this rabbit hole.
I think so, definitely. Like when I started kind of orange pilling people, or actually it was the other way around, that when it was like 2017, when the next bull run or the big bull run happened, a lot of people obviously came to me and said, "Hey, you're the Bitcoin dude, right? Like, you know about this stuff. How can I get involved?" So truly newbies that just wanted to come for the speculation. They just wanted, the price go up and make some more dollars, or in our case, Swiss francs, with it. So I obviously helped them to do it, but they didn't really understand the implications of it because it was too early. Now I feel like lately, like the last year or two, people approach me differently and they say, "Hey, I think this is the future. I don't really understand it yet, but I think this kind of is the future. It's here to stay because it is already here for more than 10 years, and they kind of start to feel a little bit that things are becoming more difficult economically, financially. So they are looking at it not yet as a hedge or a store of value, but something to bet on for the future. Like, they think this is actually a great investment. They don't really know why, because there needs to be way more education. It just takes way more time. Like, the adoption of a new technology like this, like the internet, took decades. Credit cards took decades. This is going to take decades. We're only 1 decade in. And so, but it definitely has changed from, oh, this is a stupid game, let's speculate a little bit. Most of the people will still very passive on it, to, oh, this could actually be interesting. I think this is here to stay. It is kind of part of the future. I want to be part of this, and let's put a little bit, like 1% of my net worth in it. To now, where I think, and this is happening this year, with especially in Europe, but obviously across the globe, kind of this huge inflation and the energy prices that are going wild, and people really feeling that a piece of meat costs so much more, filling up a tank costs so much more. Like, they now, and the central bank, the European Central Bank, promising to keep inflation at 2% levels beginning of the year, and then in Q4 it actually hits 9%. And so people really feel like there's something wrong. We cannot just trust the financial system anymore like it is now. The economy goes crazy. The institutions are basically lying to us or promising stuff that they cannot deliver on. And so I think now we are entering this third phase of people feeling that it is actually kind of a necessity to at least put a little to take a couple of chips from their savings to a savings technology that is outside of this fiat-based traditional financial system that is about to collapse, or not. Like, I don't want to be the doomsday guy here, but they just feel that there's something wrong here. Maybe it will get better, maybe it will get worse. I want to just be sure and put a little bit of my money into this Bitcoin thing, which seems more and more secure and long-term and rational investment than it has been perceived a couple of years ago.
How much is the ongoing crisis in Europe? We talk about it a lot on this show. We see the reports coming out of Europe about the energy costs just continue to compound higher and higher. We see the record inflation numbers coming out of Europe as well as our own record inflation numbers here in the States. How much are these pressures adding to the necessity for Europeans to look at Bitcoin and almost in like a, I don't mean to phrase this question in a crass way, but has your app seen an increase in onboarding as a result of sort of the dire situation in Europe?
Yeah, so the situation is getting more and more dire, and it will only get worse, in my opinion. So there's a big middle class, right, in Europe, and the euro has lost a, like a couple of percent, like a lot of its value. It has a huge inflation, and now that the winter is coming, people feel that heating has been becoming so much more expensive, and filling up the tank is getting more and more expensive, but their salary is not getting better. And when the winter is coming, it can get really cold in a lot of parts of in big parts of Europe. And so these middle class people just imagine you earn enough to feed a family of 3 or 4 or 5, and now you suddenly get an increase in energy price. So to heat your home, to have light, to drive your car, and rent's gone up a lot also because of these reasons. The prices for food has gone up. Everything goes up like 30-40%. Well, people cannot afford this. Plus, the interest rates are going up, meaning the rates for mortgages going up. So the rents are getting even more expensive. So everything's getting more expensive, which will accelerate in wintertime, so in the next few months. So people are really in dire situations and are looking for alternatives. What the fuck am I going to do with my money? How can I ensure the money doesn't just lose all its purchasing power? And in this situation they're really open to alternatives, which Bitcoin is one of these alternatives. So we do not see it, to be honest, I think, in like trading volumes a lot of Bitcoin, because right now we're just still in this crash and shock mode, and Bitcoin is from a trading perspective, like the big actors on the financial markets that are moving the markets and the prices are still looking at Bitcoin as not as a hedge or as a long-term savings technology, but they're looking as a risk-on asset, right? And so they are selling it for liquidity now. And liquidity for them is USD. So they're selling everything that is high risk, including Bitcoin. That's why the price crashed, very correlated with all the other like tech stocks and most other stocks. But the smaller kind of the normal people on the street, they are definitely looking for alternatives and getting into Bitcoin. This shows kind of in our numbers a little bit, because actually this quarter will be one of the best quarters, either the best or the second best quarter, depending on how the next few days are going, that we ever had. So even though there was the summer hole where usually there's less Bitcoin trading, because even though we haven't really spent on marketing a lot, even though the whole market crash has happened, despite all these facts, we are actually having one of the best quarters in company history. So it shows that especially Bitcoiners that already use us are doubling down, increasing their savings plans, even buying more, like buying the dip kind of thing. And also newcomers that thought about buying Bitcoin at levels of 60 or even almost 70K. And then it was too expensive for them. But now they think about it and say, look, why not maybe putting in a little bit now? So they are starting at these prices now, which is a better entry point for them. And then I also think that really, as said before, people really are looking for an alternative and betting a little bit on Bitcoin while also obviously investing still in other stuff. So I still think we are early in this education phase. But definitely we do see still demand on even bigger demands than before.
I'd love to, touch on and maybe discuss some of the questions that get asked to you by people who are trying to learn, and maybe we can help debunk some of these things. What are some common questions in the vein of Bitcoin and crypto that you have to teach new people very consistently? Like what are those one or two questions that almost every new user is asking you when they are asking you?
Yeah, good point. So the first question is always like about how do I buy? Simple things like, do I have to buy a whole coin? Or like, can I sell my Bitcoin again if I need money? Or how do I like, can I just say I want to buy $100 in Bitcoin, and will you take the money from me and give me Bitcoin? Or do you hold the Bitcoin on my behalf? If not, what do I need to do to secure my Bitcoin? Why do I need to write down these 12 words? Like, or even worse, I've lost my phone. Please give me my Bitcoin. And it's like, oh, I didn't write down the seed words. Oh, they're gone. Doesn't happen a lot, but like these are questions, like real questions. Why is the price going up and down? I have bought Bitcoin for $100. Now I only have $80. Please give me back my $20. So there are really very basic things that people don't understand, not only about Bitcoin, but also about markets and how like prices and stuff works. But I think one of the bigger issues that we as a Bitcoin community, and obviously especially also we as a service provider in the space, Relai, have to solve is about the making it easier to buy Bitcoin and easier to understand. First, easy to understand why even to buy Bitcoin, why is it a good idea long term to buy some Bitcoin, and then how to make it easier to buy Bitcoin with different payment methods, for example, or just making the process easier and explain it. So yes, you need to pay for your Bitcoin until you get the Bitcoin. You cannot pull the money from your bank account, and then but very important as well to hold and safeguard their Bitcoin. We need to teach people that now this is a new time, a new era, where you can digitally hold money for yourself, and you don't need an institution for that. You don't need Relai to hold on to your Bitcoin, because you can hold on very easily. You can hold on to your Bitcoin. And this is first, we need to give them more education about it, so writing down the 12 words and stuff. But also we need to give them the technology to do that very simply within a couple of clicks to store their coins in an easier way than it is possible now.
I just have to ask this question, but when users use Relay, they're able to just buy and sell as they see fit, no different than most other Bitcoin exchanges, correct?
That's correct, yes. It's just we never hold the funds, the fiat funds or the Bitcoin funds on their behalf, but they can obviously buy and sell as they see fit. That's correct.
Interesting. And so would a user of Relay, are there KYC laws in Switzerland for an exchange like Relay or Relai?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, of course, yes. They're just a little bit more in favor of users than in other places in the world and in the rest of Europe. So in Switzerland, there's a 1K limit of like a daily limit of 1K that you can buy and sell, like transact Bitcoin without any KYC, without any registration or verification or onboarding. Like we don't even have to know the name or the address, let alone the ID, passport or whatever information from our users, up until 1K per day and 100K per year. We are a regulated, licensed virtual asset service provider. So basically, we have quote unquote a broker license. So we can help people exchange fiat to Bitcoin and back. What we're not allowed to do is hold on to like taking custody of the assets of our users or making investment decisions for our users, because that would make us an asset manager or a bank. But we, as a broker, we can do bipartite exchange between different assets, such as fiat and Bitcoin. And in Switzerland, there's a threshold of these 1K per day. Below, it's like it's called Kassageschäft, so just a simple exchange without any custody involved, and then it's no KYC basically. Now, because we are regulated in Switzerland, we can do this technically in the whole world, and we are now open for all the European countries. So we're live with active users in 40 different countries in Europe. Our main market is actually Germany, the biggest country in Europe.
So I'm a little curious, and I appreciate the distinction of you and your business being brokers and not a formal bank. Anyone who grew up watching any sort of mafia movie knows the legend of what a Swiss bank actually offers and the privacy it entails. Um, I'm curious if, based on the way the law is in Switzerland, if Relay were to shift its business model to be a bank, would you still have to be KYC compliant, or would there be a new level of anonymity and privacy for your users as a result, given the fact that you would be a digital bank in this iteration, not a physical brick and mortar traditional Swiss bank?
Yeah, no, I mean the mafia metaphor doesn't work anymore since a couple of years, because the banking secrecy is not in place anymore. This was what kind of this was one piece of the puzzle why Switzerland was such an interesting thing. But now, no, there's no since then there's actually no big differentiation between banks. Like there's no differentiation between a physical bank or a digital bank. If you're a bank, you are licensed differently. You have more requirements, more legal requirements. You need to do all the KYC, AML, proof of funds, and all these checks. You need to gather all these data from the user. But just because of the business model is different, because you don't just do exchange, but you also take on custody for the assets. And once you have custody on behalf of your customers and do transaction on behalf of your customers, you're regulated like way differently. And so this is not something we strive for, because we believe that Bitcoin is now this great asset that people can hold on to themselves. And we think the trend is clearly going towards, millennials and Gen Z. These are clearly people that want to take control of their own assets and of their own actions and of their lives. They think more in decentralized terms. They don't like institutions like banks and governments anymore that much. Like surveys show that really 3 out of 4 millennials don't really trust their government or don't really trust their financial institutions anymore. So we think there's a big trend going towards this non-custodial asset safeguarding, and that's what Bitcoin provides. And that's also why we are not really interested in becoming like a fully fledged bank. We want to be exactly in the business that we are in now, which is about educating people about Bitcoin and how to treat Bitcoin, and making it super easy for people to buy, and if they want also sell Bitcoin. And to give them the tool set, the software to interact with Bitcoin in any ways that they want, also to make payments, to send money to their peers globally, to just hold their money in an app or in a hardware wallet, and just exchange between the old money, fiat, and the new money, Bitcoin. But we are not interested to hold Bitcoin on behalf of the people, because we believe that in the next decades they will want a bigger chunk of the world will want to hold their savings technology and their money on their own.
I'm curious if you guys, especially in Switzerland, are. I understand that, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm learning very quickly how little I know about Switzerland, the laws over there, and just Europe in general. Switzerland, not formally a part of the EU. You guys have your own Swiss franc, but do decisions around the euro, or earlier today, Chris and I were talking about how over the weekend, the European Union announced Amazon is going to be leading the charge for the EU CBDC. Do any of these type of decisions around your broader Europe's monetary policy impact just Switzerland in general?
Yeah, indirectly, yes. Because I mean, we're geographically part of Europe. We're actually almost the middle of Europe, and also economically, like we're doing a lot of trade, and there's a lot of person traffic and everything going on between us and them. And then politically, obviously, we're very close to all these countries. We're a neutral country, and we are not a EU country, so we don't share many of the laws, and we don't share the currency. But mainly, we're also kind of dependent on what they do, and obviously they are bigger, and so whatever they do also puts pressure on our stuff. So if they come up with new laws, doesn't mean that we directly have to follow that, but obviously there's always kind of pressure, because this would then again be a opportunity to kind of make legal arbitrage. So for people that are living in the EU zone to profit from the different laws in Switzerland, which is actually right now what a lot of people are doing, which is not wrong. It's not illegal. It's nothing. It's just totally normal. But these are things that the EU wants to avoid. For example, that now a German or an Austrian or a French or an Italian person who would not be able to buy Bitcoin without any registration or onboarding in his country can do it very easily with a digital app like ours, because he's basically digitally traveling to Switzerland to do this transaction, right? So there is influence. This is what we also feel, this kind of political pressure, and there will be at one point also changes because of that. And right now in Europe, when it comes to Bitcoin and crypto laws, there's a lot going on. Definitely, it's not clear yet in which direction it will get, and like the timings and the concrete changes are not clear. And so, just to answer your questions, it will at one point we will develop in similar directions. So we're indirectly linked to each other, like the Swiss and the European legislation.
And then, have you had a chance to visit Lugano, which, if I again did not make a mistake, is the city in Switzerland that has pushed forward legislation to adopt Bitcoin?
Absolutely. So Switzerland in general has been dubbed in 2018 as the crypto nation. So there's a lot of obviously crypto stuff, but also Bitcoin stuff happening, a lot of activity there, and our government is very open on a federal level. Now we have 26 cantons. One of these cantons is Lugano, which is in the Italian-speaking part of Switzerland. We had Zug, which is called the Crypto Valley, which is in the German-speaking area of Switzerland. That is, had Ethereum Foundation and Tesos Foundation, and a lot of these other crypto stuff. But also a big Bitcoin scene is in Zug and Zurich, which are cities right next to each other. So there were on a federal level and on a cantonal level already a lot of efforts towards Bitcoin and crypto adoption. And so we always, as a country, have been very friendly and very open to this innovation, which is why kind of we have several hubs already building and progressing in Switzerland. Now Lugano is kind of the latest hub that is about. I'm pretty sure there is a lot of activity happening there. I haven't been there yet to check it out on the ground. I just have talked to a couple of our investors that are involved in this quote unquote Plan B initiative. I obviously read the news and I talked to a couple of people that have been there. It seems like this is going to be quite a thing, and it will summit, like this whole initiative will summit at the Plan B forum by the end of October. Just going to be there. Relai and we are going to be there, and a lot of great people Nick Szabo and Adam Back and a couple of great Bitcoiners are going to be there to speak. And I know that the whole Bitcoin community, it's going to be a Bitcoin only conference, which is great, even though it's organized by Tether partly, but it's a Bitcoin only conference that really will lay out the concrete plan and progress of this Plan B initiative, which is the initiative trying to make Lugano one of the, or even the Bitcoin hub in Switzerland. So this is very exciting development. I'm looking forward to be there in a bit more than a month to check how things are progressing and developing in the future. Definitely very exciting.
Definitely exciting to see more city states and just regions of the world continue to adopt Bitcoin and see the potential it has. I wanted, Julian, just sort of have a discussion with you for the rest of our time of just what are, in your opinion, as you are living in Europe and you can see it firsthand, what are the biggest hurdles standing in the way of Bitcoin adoption in Europe and more specifically in Switzerland?
Yeah. So, I mean, education. It's just really there hasn't been enough time and commitment of people, and maybe also the problem has not been big enough, like the sense of urgency has not been big enough to really have the broad masses taking the time to educate themselves about this technology. But I also think that it's totally normal. It would just need way more time. In my opinion, we probably overestimate the speed of it. It will take longer than we expect. Just we will need some time for people to get used to this technology and use it and try it out and learn about it until there will be broad adoption. And there needs to be a need. That there's no real need just yet. Like depending on how the inflation and everything is changing in the near future, it might also come very fast. But currently, especially in Switzerland, like we have a very good government. We have a very stable financial system. Our currency is pretty stable with only quote unquote 3.5% of inflation. So people don't really feel the need yet, but once they do, this will progress in the future. It takes a bit more time and education. Another blocker to adoption, I guess, is the image of Bitcoin in Europe. Not in Switzerland specifically, but in Europe in general, it has a bad image. Bitcoin has a bad image. Still struggling with this. Oh, it's the currency for the dark web. It's the currency for money laundering. It's the currency for criminals, terrorist finance, and so forth. But what's even worse is the whole energy consumption topic. So it's really lately, especially in boulevard press, in like press all around Europe, this narrative of Bitcoin being, using as much energy as big countries, so using too much energy and being unsustainable, unecological. This is really something that stops people from using Bitcoin or getting into Bitcoin, because at the same time it's this whole ESG movement. So this, especially also from young people and from politicians and from bigger corporates, this push towards more sustainability, more ecological use of energy and stuff like that, which is obviously great, but that in the media narrative, it's really okay. We as kind of a generation need to move humanity and society to more ecological use of energy, right? There's consensus about that. And then at the same time, oh, look at this Bitcoin thing. it doesn't really add value. It's only like a game. They don't understand the value, but it uses so much energy, and it's really bad energy. Like it uses coal and nuclear energy. It's all bad, and it has a very high carbon emissions and stuff like that. I think this is a big hurdle that and that's also where Bitcoin Magazine, I think, can do a lot in really doing research and journalism and writing great articles about this, is to educate people that, hey, it is actually helping to use energy. Bitcoin is helping in the end to use energy more efficiently, and it's a sustainable thing. The energy mix is and will become even more sustainable until it will actually be carbon negative at one point. It's important for us as a Bitcoin community as well to educate the broad public about this, and to try to change or challenge this narrative, so that this narrative of Bitcoin being very ecological, we need to try to change that in public minds, because there's already in politics talks in Europe about banning Bitcoin or banning Bitcoin mining, because it's so energy it's consuming so much energy, especially in the energy crisis that we have now. Like the perception is, oh, we have not enough energy is so expensive, so why are we using 1% of the world's energy for this shitty Bitcoin mining? Like we should criminalize that, we should ban that. This is kind of a narrative that is starting to get traction, and we need to find ways to work against that.
I know we spend a lot of time both on this show and in Bitcoin Magazine really trying to combat that climate change FUD, and it feels like that is the main attack point today right now. Julian, what are some talking points that you like to use when you are trying to disprove that FUD?
Yeah, so I always say that you can use, like, miners can go everywhere, anywhere to mine Bitcoin, right? So right now we need to produce energy where it is used, because we cannot really store and we cannot efficiently transact or send the energy from one place to the other, transfer energy. So we need to produce it where we use it. Whereas Bitcoin miners are geographically, independent, so they can go anywhere. Where will they go? They will go to places where energy is available in surplus, right? And where usually they go to as cheap as possible energy sources, which tend to be the more sustainable energy sources. And so naturally, the energy mix of mining is already more than 50% sustainable, and will become more and more sustainable. And then I also try to use this example to be less theoretic, more pragmatic. I use this example. Look, there is this phenomenon called flaming, where oil producers, for example, have a byproduct, which is gas, and they either release this gas, methane, and all these other gases that are produced byproducts from oil. They either release it to the atmosphere, or they even burn it, which is called flaming. And this is a big carbon emission thing, and this is really what drives climate change and is very unecological, right? So there's actually initiatives for Bitcoin miners to use this energy, this surplus energy that cannot be used, that needs to be burned actually. They can transfer this to Bitcoin. So you can actually use surplus energy that would be wasted otherwise and pollute the earth. You can use it to make money, to make digital store of value. And so how cool is that? This is actually a way to use energy more efficiently in the world, and in the end can make Bitcoin even not only a carbon neutral, but actually a carbon negative process. So you have all the value that a decentralized, open, and neutral financial system brings, plus it has actually um, positive effects on our energy consumption as a society. So I think this is these are parts of the narrative. This is the narrative that we need to build, is that Bitcoin is not bad for the planet, it's good for the planet, and it helps to use energy more efficiently rather than less efficiently, and it is more sustainable rather than less sustainable than the alternatives that we now have. I also like to compare to the existing financial system that we have now. Like, how much energy do you think the banking system is using? How much energy do you think gold mining is using? How much energy the printing of actual money, physical money, banknotes is using? This is so much energy. And what do you think the energy mix of that is? What do you think how sustainable these energy sources are? They're definitely less. There is way more energy used and way less sustainable energy. And then there's also the comparison to not even only the financial system, but also other stuff. Like, Bitcoin is using less energy than the United States uses for their Christmas lights in every year. So Christmas lights in December and winter uses more energy than running a global financial system. It's crazy. YouTube, for example, is using way more energy. Like, all these cat videos and all that kind of stuff is using way more energy than Bitcoin. So I try to put Bitcoin in perspective in terms of how sustainable it is and how much energy it actually uses. And then if people understand these perspectives, then usually they don't think it's a bad thing anymore at all.
I love the compare and contrast of how much energy is being used in all of these other things. I mean, my favorite one is always how much energy is used to maintain all of the bank ATMs that are available to you 24/7 so you can access your fiat dollars, on top of the amount of energy that the US government has to use to maintain the military, to maintain the supremacy of the US dollar. But that's a rabbit hole that we'll get into another time. I want to, Julian, give you the opportunity. I've been asking you a lot about Europe and a lot of just sort of conversations about education and onboarding, but has there been anything in particular that you've wanted to touch on that we haven't yet had a chance to discuss?
Well, do you think, I mean, obviously, I'm happy to share a bit more on what's on the horizon for Relay, if you may.
Sure.
Or I could also have a question for kind of from the Europeans to the Americans. So maybe we could start with that.
Let's start with that. Yeah.
All right. So, like, it's always interesting for us to look across the ocean and to what's happening in the US, because the US is kind of the dominant country in the world, even, and has the dominant currency. I feel like lately, with developments in Russia, China, and so forth, there are initiatives trying to weaken the US dollar as a reserve currency. Do you feel are people afraid of that in the US, that this could happen in the near to mid future, that the USD will lose its dominant reserve currency status? And what is Bitcoin maybe playing for, like, what role is Bitcoin playing in that scenario, if it is a scenario?
Totally. I think you have to separate the response into different groups of people. And I would say there are three, just for simplicity's sake, knowing full well there are closer to 500. I'd say the first group is the Bitcoiners, who very much buy that narrative, who kind of see the writing on the wall and see how the moves the US government is making and the moves that foreign governments are making are in a direct path to eventually have the US dollar no longer be the global reserve currency. I think there is a sentiment, and I'll speak for myself mainly, that should more countries be granted the ability to price oil in their own native currency, it doesn't need to be formally announced. It doesn't need to be a declaration from OPEC or from the EU or anywhere else saying, hey, the dollar is just, it's not the global reserve currency. To me, whatever is the global standard to price oil in will be, in the intermediate term, the global reserve currency. There's the secondary issue of the impending collapse of the European bond market. We've seen this happen across more developing nations. We see the collapse of the Japanese yen. There's now another class of people who I actually think in the shorter term, the strength of the dollar will continue to increase, but it's only inevitable that with that increase, now there's added pressure. And ultimately, I always go back to, why would we believe that the people who made the decisions to put us in this situation we find ourselves in now, why would they also be the same people who would be able to get us out of the position that they put us in? So I would explain sort of those two within the Bitcoin community. And then there is, in my opinion, a vast majority of people in America who have no grasp or real understanding of what does it mean to have the global reserve currency be our native currency and be the currency that our country and government is able to print to no end. And for the vast majority of those people, they can be told all of these things and yet would rather just say, but it doesn't matter. Like, the US dollar has existed my whole life and it will continue. And there's a lot of denial, I think. I have it amongst close friends of mine who I'll have these types of conversations with, and their response will just be like, yeah, but like the government will figure it out. Like, the US dollar is just, the dollar's not going to go away. And I think there will be a lot of pain in that class of people. I think a lot of them will be shocked when the inevitable happens. And then the final group of people, I think, is or are the decision makers, the people in government who maybe see some of, but not all of, what the class of Bitcoiners see, the inevitability of the end of the dollar. And they think that if they do just one or two things correctly from here on out, that things will return back to normal and everything will be fine and dandy. And the US dollar and the USA will remain in power. And I genuinely believe it's the combination of both of those ideas that gives fuel to our policymakers here in this country. Whether they're right or wrong, I believe they're wrong. I've said for some time now that, like, the best example of this is Jerome Powell coming out in 2021 saying inflation will be transitory. Don't you worry about it. It's not a problem. Only to then in April or May go under oath in a hearing in front of Congress and say, yeah, we made a mistake. We didn't know as much as we thought we did. And that's why we find ourselves here. I have no reason to believe that from that moment in time to today, he's learned so much that his decisions will right the ship. But I think I am in the minority, truthfully.
Yeah, it's an interesting discussion. It's the same thing, like the ECB coming out, oh, we will go back to 2% inflation, and then just a couple of months later they say, oh, actually we're now trying to stick below 10% inflation. Like, oh, we did a mistake. Like, it's really hard to believe that they have any control over anything, or are just bluntly lying with an agenda. But it's getting more and more tough to really trust on in these institutions. And as you say, I think it was Einstein who said something like, yeah, to do the same behavior and expecting another outcome is like craziness.
Insanity.
So this is as you said, we cannot probably trust on the people that created the problem, solve the problem.
Exactly. Julian, as we wind down, I want to give you the opportunity to let our audience know more about Relai and what's coming up with the app and where they can stay up to date with any of these updates you guys have cooking.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we were on the market for a bit more than 2 years now. We were the first Bitcoin only stacking sats mobile app with a non-custodial wallet integrated and with a almost non-existent onboarding process that only takes 1 minute and allows people to invest in Bitcoin from already $10 on buying, selling, and especially auto saving Bitcoin. So 60% of our users do have an automatic savings plan running. So this is obviously used a lot and really cool. But what we have found in these 2 years is that we need to make it even easier for people to buy Bitcoin. Right now, they can buy it with just a bank transfer. This can sometimes take 1 or even 2 days for them to send money from their bank account to our Swiss bank account. And sometimes it can cost some fees. So it's really not yet a perfect kind of experience. And we've worked hard on that during summer to fix this. So in a couple of weeks or even days, like beginning of October, we will release this new, it is completely new app, basically. Like we have really reworked a lot of stuff in this new update that is coming up, where it will be possible for everyone in Europe within 1 minute to buy, pay, and get their Bitcoin into non-custodial in their non-custodial wallet 24/7. So imagine Sunday morning you wake up, you have a coffee, and you want to buy the dip. You can do it within a couple of clicks. You can use still bank transfer, instant SEPA transfer, but you can also use credit card or Google Pay or Apple Pay or PayPal, stuff like that. Just instant payment, and within seconds you have purchased the Bitcoin at the price that you wanted, that you saw, and you will get the Bitcoin within minutes. So this will be a world's first. There's no service that I am aware of that is Bitcoin only and allowing you 24/7 to buy Bitcoin within a minute from $10 already and getting it directly delivered to your own non-custodial Relai wallet. So this is the thing that I'm most excited about probably this year, coming up beginning of October. So really watch out for what we are delivering, and there will be a couple of other very cool stuff happening with other areas of the app right now, like the referral program has been worked on, and there's a lot of cool UX UI changes that all of you will like. So stay tuned. What we are going to deliver as an update beginning of October, where you can get in touch with us or keep up to date is obviously we're on Twitter. Twitter handle is probably something at Relai_app, I think. You will find us there, and then we're also, our DMs are open. We have Telegram chats that you can join if you want, and probably easiest way to get in touch is just to download, for the Europeans, to download the app, and you can also on the top right chat icon you can start conversation with us. Yeah, so thanks. It's actually at Relai_app. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Myself, I'm also on Twitter if you want to follow me and ask some questions about Bitcoin and the world and Relai. Just feel free to get in touch. Happy to have a conversation.
Julian, thank you so much for taking the time and joining us today, man. Highly recommend you give Julian a follow. And for anyone over in Europe who needs a different way to buy their Bitcoin, be sure to check out Relai. We're going to do a hard wrap here, gang. I want to thank everyone for tuning in today. Just a reminder, tickets for Bitcoin Amsterdam are on sale now. Use promo code BMLive to get 10% off, and ticket prices will be going up on Friday. You have been warned. I continue to warn you. Do not miss out. We will see you guys tomorrow, and we will be back with the final date coverage of the Hodlnaut v. Craig Wright trial up in Oslo. So you're not going to want to miss this. Set your alarms for 1 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow. We'll be back with specific mills reporting from the ground. Thank you all, and stack saft and stay humble.